Everyone knows the United States is a melting pot of world cultures, thoughts, and people. Ethnicities from every corner of the globe can come here and make a dream here. Any dream that is dreamt here can become the American dream. Amen. It is through the unity of our people and the open-minded nature of our society that this reality is possible. However, it is a society that many praise as free and opportunist that is the biggest obstacle for outsiders with the desire to get in. I am a born Mexican American with the United States citizenship. My mother from Guadalajara, my father from Celaya. They met as students at the University of Guadalajara, and after marrying, they moved north to attend Notre Dame University. Up north in South Bend, Indiana, I was born. My sister 2 years earlier than me in Guadalajara as a Mexican citizen. Spent my early years in Indiana, with my first years of school in a private Catholic school where my sister and I were in maybe the 5% of families that weren't from generations of white American Catholics. In my third year, we moved south to where I am now, Grapevine, Texas. As a kid, I didn't notice all the differences in the amount of diversity here in sunbathed Texas versus up north in snow-chilled Indiana. But every year, I go along with my parents to watch a game of Notre Dame football. And each year, I notice more and more of the background of my parents' university friends. Each year, I see that the diversity in my school and town is more and more vibrant here in Grapevine. Of course, full cultural diversity isn't a necessity in any society. As long as there is an open-minded thought process, anybody can be included. Even if they're from a completely different background, inclusivity should always be possible. For the most part, that is what I've partly experienced in my life. People may see my color and know my background, but they treat me with equal respect as they would anybody else. This is a choice, though there are many actions that people can take when they see someone ethnically different than them. The way of life here in the United States has done well by making it so that the majority of people will act in a respectful and open-minded way. Respect and inclusivity are two different terms, though, and they aren't interchangeable. The largest problem that I observe is the one that isn't a choice. It is a systemic separation that can do the most damage to an outsider coming in. But what do I mean when I say systemic separation? Well, by being systemic, becomes a trend that can be hard to notice because it's ingrained itself in the very society it's affecting. But if you look just hard enough, you begin to see the very alarming patterns that entrap the outside populations. The problem that I speak of is the predictable habit that the Latino community faces in American society. Xenophobia, racism, and classist habits are visible and present at the very surface of American culture. Though it is unfortunate, the truth is that old, outdated values that choke the past have been passed down to grip the present. Prejudice is the first barrier that the Latino community and all outsider communities face when integrating into modern-day America. Though prejudice and racial injustice is a huge problem in itself, it is the indirect consequence that can be even more dangerous and tragic. Let me project the problem by describing the narrative that is frequently faced by the Latino community. Could be a United States-born child with immigrant parents or an immigrant themselves that experiences this. The problem isn't actually too particular over its targets, but the U.S.'s Latino population has seen the highest numbers of it. I'm talking about the use of and distribution of illicit and dangerous drugs. According to a survey done by the Substance Abuse and Mental Service Administration in 2018, over 1 million Hispanic and Latino youth have used illicit drugs in that year. Over 1 million. Children and students. There's something wrong here. There's a problem, but the solution actually may not be as simple as one would hope. The problem isn't one that has a long-term fix from a direct response, but one that can only be taken care of if it is uprooted from the ground up. So, what is the root of the problem? That's a very good question, and one that I found myself asking a few months ago. I knew from talking to my Hispanic and Latino friends that most of them had already tried an assortment of illicit materials, at least once, some many more times. I began casually gathering information, asking questions whenever I was around them, asking how or why they decided to, do drugs. The most common answer by far that I received was that because everyone else was doing them. The most strangest thing is what I heard, because according to a survey done by the National Center for Drug Abuse, in 2017, only 29.75 American high school students had used marijuana or another illicit drug in that entire year, and barely 6% responded to daily or near daily usage. So again, that's strange. Why are Hispanic and Latino youth saying that they're doing it because everyone else is doing it, when not everyone else is doing it? Well, there's a simple answer to that. It's because everyone these Hispanic populations tend to hang around is doing it. Mainly more Latino and other minority groups. They're doing it. It's the unfortunate truth that yes, almost 40% of Hispanic and Latino adolescent populations in the United States experiment with illicit drugs, including marijuana, cocaine, ecstasy, methamphetamine, even heroin. But this is an inherited issue that arises from and because of the social separation of the immigrant community due to the systemic trends that have developed in the modern American youth. The passive cloud of xenophobia and prejudice from the United States that surrounds and engulfs immigrant populations is an unspoken but well-known phenomenon. Countless people have told their stories and revealed the ugly beneath the facade. But it's still there. It's seen as the normal thing to do. Hang out and befriend those similar to you, and when those different than you are your friend, it should be seen as an exception rather than the status quo. This is simply a tradition that is silently kept up from generation to generation. Even my parents find it a bit odd that I've kept the same core friend group of 5 guys over the 6 years that I've known them. All white, of course. It's this passive yet strong expectation to conform to the people around you that leads the Latino and immigrant youth populations of the U.S. to be drawn away from the habits and the culture of the mainstream youth in America. Illicit drugs, obviously, are not massively popular things that every person is hoping to try. I hope. This, unfortunately, drives the audience of such things to the more focused groups of people, such as those who have been driven out of the mainstream audience. The correlation is clear. Exclusion of certain groups from the main social population exposes those excluded groups to the interests and the habits that aren't adopted by the mainstream population. Fortunately and unfortunately, it is the mainstream to both follow the law and not experiment with dangerous drugs. This is the biggest obstacle that immigrants, all immigrants, and people on the outside face when wanting to get in. Integration is difficult when there are generations of tradition and history that are wanting to be followed. When one finds a group that is finally wanting to welcome them with open arms, one would be willing to do anything to keep that sense of community and familiarity. And that, unfortunately, is the most dangerous mindset that a person can have when trying to integrate. Thank you.